Hello, and welcome to this topic on project-based learning. My name is Anne Gilleran, and I come from Dublin in Ireland. I currently work at the European SchoolNet as Pedagogical Manager. However, I've worked all my life in education, both as a teacher, a guidance counsellor, a school principal, and even a teacher trainer. Today, I want to explore with you some of the ideas behind project-based learning, or PBL for short. Look at some of the various models of project-based learning and pinpoint some basic considerations which must be taken into account when planning a PBL activity with your students. Project-based learning is an approach which uses methods such as inquiry-based learning and problem-based learning to develop students' competences. Let me explain this a little more. Having decided to explore a topic or concentrate on an aspect of your curriculum, you can decide to use either an inquiry-based approach or a problem-based approach, or indeed a mixture of the two. Let's examine the inquiry-based learning method first. Inquiry is a seeking or a request for truth, information, or knowledge. Inquiry-based learning starts with questioning, continues with exploration and investigation, and ends with finding a solution, drawing a reasonable conclusion, making substantive decision, or applying new knowledge or skills. It is often used to explore deep questions such as, are all humans born free? Is democracy the ideal way to organize society? Inquiry-based learning relies on questioning. You may say, however, that so does traditional learning. The difference is, however, that in the traditional classroom, it is the teacher who asks the questions to which answers can easily be found, and which usually do not go beyond the immediate available information. In an inquiry-driven classroom, not only the teacher asks the open-ended questions, but also the students themselves. Students are encouraged to question, argument, information, ideas, opinions, and viewpoints. In other words, to go deeper and generate new questions which will lead them to new knowledge. Let's have a look at the type of questions that one should concentrate on. And I quote here from the work of John Mercandollar of the Book Institute for Education. He says that in a PBL or inquiry environment, the project should investigate what he describes as non-Googleable driving questions. In other words, questions that cannot easily be answered by just looking up Google or Bing or Wikipedia or any of those online encyclopedias. Just like in the pre-internet days, students would look up an encyclopedia and slavishly copy the information, providing their answers. His example of Googleable questions are, for example, who were the first settlers in our city? What does it mean to be a healthy ether? How are airplane wings constructed? Of course, to quote Mercandollar, he doesn't want to say that these types of questions aren't worth knowing, because of course they are, and they can lead students to engage in a form of research. Such research, however, emphasizes uncovering information and explicating concepts, rather than critically thinking about the information and the concepts. On the other hand, non-Googleable questions would be, what was the most important cause of our city's growth, for example? How can we best convince teenagers to be healthy eaters? How can we design an airplane wing that is light and will support 25 pounds without breaking? Answers to these types of questions can't be found on Google without digging deeply. The whole purpose of inquiry-based learning is to encourage pupils to research and to find answers and solutions to help them, to develop higher-order thinking skills, analyze the information they find, interpret it and compare their findings, synthesize the ideas, evaluate strengths and weaknesses, peer assess and self-assess it, find solutions and create a new product. Let's now take a look at problem-based learning method, which is more practical. Students are given a real-life problem to investigate, which can be described as an authentic problem, and have to come up with possible solutions. It may be widely applied to all kinds of real-life problems. The solutions can then be discussed and tested to see which will work best in a given situation, for example. How to provide the best care for elderly people in their own homes. How to improve access to public buildings. Both of these approaches focus on developing problem-solving, critical thinking, and information processing skills. They also work best when the students have to work in small teams or groups. The two methods are indeed closely related to each other, and they often overlap. It's also interesting to note that in this approach there are not necessarily any right or wrong answers. Each solution has its merits and demerits, and the students have to analyse and judge for themselves. Now, this can be a new departure for some teachers who have to, up to now, always dealt in factual knowledge. I'm sure you were familiar with the phrase, tell me and I forget, show me and I remember, involve me and I understand. This is the basic tenet of PBL. It is, of course, more demanding on both students and teachers, but it is also more rewarding. Implementing the PBL approach in your teaching requires you to bear in mind a few practicalities before you start. So here are some pointers that you need to think about, which you can consider as a preliminary checklist. First, what is your project idea? What is the time frame proposed? Is it a year, 6 months? Is the project idea manageable? Is it not overly ambitious? Is it a project just between you and your class, or will you collaborate with other teachers in your school, or indeed in other countries? If it involves partners for other countries, what are the language of the project? What language do you propose? What subjects could be integrated into this project? What technical tools, if any, will you use? How does your project fit with the school planning and the calendar? Once you have fulfilled these basic points, you are ready to start. So step 1, involve your students from the very beginning. Start with a guided exploration of some topics you have in mind as a whole class, but be prepared to change if better ideas are emerging from the class. It is also important to establish certain ground rules with your students regarding behaviour with them in advance. Step 2, having defined the topic in discussion with the class, break it down into different tasks. Discuss which technologies to use and how they will be integrated. Step 3, plan well. Set goals, define outcomes. Above all, be concrete. Students need concrete goals to work upon and the responsibility of tasks in order to achieve them. Step 4, proceed to break the students into small groups and give them responsibility for a particular task. Encourage them to ask relevant and significant questions regarding the topics chosen and try to work to the strengths of each pupil. Step 5 is to create, at the end, a tangible artifact that addresses the issue or answers question and makes the learning visible and accountable. Step 6, arrive at a conclusion, take a stand, take action, and the most important, document, step 7, and present to a wider audience. Build in artifacts, outcomes, and different audiences as part of the project. The presentation of ideas to others consolidates the learning for your students. When you actively engage the students in their learning activities and find these activities to be meaningful with a tangible outcome, their attitude to learning will undoubtedly change for the better. Learning becomes fun. My final point is this. PBL can be approached in 2 ways. Either you work in your own classroom with your class and the work is kept in there, or you decide to collaboratively work with other teachers, either in your own school, your own country, or in other countries. When you take this broader approach, the rewards of collaboration can be of enormous benefit, both to you and your students. The benefits of exchange and peer learning really does help you to consolidate your approach to changing teaching practice through discussion with other teachers. You are no longer alone. If you are interested in developing projects in a national, European or international context, I advise you to check out the project eTwinning, www.etwinning.net. Here you will find a professional community of over 260,000 teachers interested in you and your ideas. I wish you every enjoyment of this course. I'm sure you will learn a lot and also apply what you learn widely. And I look forward maybe meeting you one day in our connected world.